And thank you for coming to the Finance Committee meeting where we're going to take a deeper dive into operations. I'm going to hand it over to Jim Lill.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Jim Lill, Director of Operations. Today, Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022. This is the Finance Committee meeting, and this is our annual presentation of the Operations Department as a whole and the Operations Department budget. I'd like to get started by giving everyone the department's organizational chart, and we have some positions here with some boxes and some names. And these people are in the room, so I want to connect the person with the box with the name. Now I realize for the live stream, you won't be able to see the person on the live stream, but I just want to acknowledge the people here and the names behind, or the people behind the names on the boxes. So I'll start with the Assistant Director of Operations, Ken Pitts, to my right. Ken, as you can see from the org chart, is responsible for the day-to-day operations of everything we do or everything that we maintain and everything that the district owns in terms of grounds, buildings, building maintenance, utilities, security, and the various trades. Ken has a very large area of responsibility. He covers a lot of areas. There is some involvement that he has with construction, some involvement with the middle school, which I'll touch on in a second. And then also we have projects we do on a 5-year plan, long-term maintenance, that Ken's very heavily involved in. Ken's area of responsibility, his scope of responsibility, I think can be summed up by describing it as anything maintenance related that doesn't involve a large yellow object with wheels. Moving to large yellow objects with wheels, which are also known as school buses. That brings Oldest Vilsons into the picture, also to my right as the Supervisor of Transportation and his team. We have the 3 bus depots where buses are stored and operate. Maston Ford Road is home base. Oldest, his office is there. His staff is there. The day-to-day logistics that they do is extremely impressive. If you walk into the dispatcher office at 5 in the morning, you'll find the team, the staff, juggling chainsaws, pulling rabbits out of their hats, and making other last-minute adjustments every morning to get the buses on the road. And I just want to acknowledge their consistent and impressive efforts. And to the right is Project Manager Gary Musial. Gary's done a variety of projects throughout the district, probably every location and every site that we own. His focus right now, and obviously a large commitment of time, energy, and talent is going towards Black Rock Middle School. So Gary is right there in the center, second row. And again, very talented, can cover a lot of different areas. Obviously with the size and magnitude of Black Rock, he's spending right now all of his time here until completion. So our grounds foreman, Bob Schultz, he is responsible for our overall grounds maintenance in the athletic fields. We have our own in-house ground staff, a very talented, very dedicated group. They will be out there at 3, 4 in the morning in snowstorms. Supervisor of Safety, Security, and Custodian, Dennis Witt. We have our custodial foreman, John Cush, who more or less covers the night shift. That's not really the best way to describe it, but John is available because we do have custodial staff at night, but there's certainly plenty of overlap during the day between Dennis and John. Dennis has also taken on a great deal of responsibility in his role with health and safety, in his role with safety and security. Obviously with COVID and various protocols, he's been very much on the front lines of developing and implementing a lot of our protocols and processes lately. The Supervisor of UBM, that's one of our acronyms for Utilities Building Maintenance, that is Chris Schaefer. I neglected to mention that we have our own in-house custodial staff. We also have our own staff, in-house skilled trades, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, HVAC, an extremely talented group, just extremely knowledgeable. I can tell you I've probably learned more from some of our skilled tradespersons than some of the things at Drexel, because I learned how to put it on paper. They actually taught me how to make it work. More specifically, they figured out how to get what I designed to work, because it didn't necessarily have all the right features. Chris has done a great job with our utilities. keeping the buildings maintained, and then also keeping up with different things like the MERV 13 filters and ventilation that have become a need, and there's a lot of moving parts to that I think Chris deserves a lot of credit for. So I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. There's myself, Ken, Bob, Dennis, Chris, John's not here, Aldous, and Gary, and the other person that I would acknowledge under the administrative assistant box, that is Dana Del Conte. Dana is the administrative assistant to the operations department. I just want to point out, we had Ann Noblet, after 23 years of service with the school district, 23 years specifically in operations, recently retired. I just realized that she did spend 23 years directly in operations, and I give her credit for putting up with us. And she has retired. We had her retirement party about a week or two ago. There's a replacement coming on board, big shoes to fill, and we're in transition there. Sue Rogers has 28 years with the school district, I think 7 or 8 with them with the operations department. She will tell you that her best 7 or 8 years were with the operations department. I think I can say that confidently. She will be retiring in July, and again, another set of big shoes to fill, and we're also looking to fill a vacancy in our project manager's administrative assistant. So I appreciate Dana being here, and I just wanted to point out a little bit of transition there, but Dana's been with us for several months now and has been a great addition to the team. So that's basically the overall structure. This is the people and the boxes. So I'm going to turn it over to Ken to get into the actual day-to-day maintenance of the facilities and take it from here. Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to thank the board and the administration for the opportunity to share with what operations does. For the most part, if we're doing our job right, you never see us, and we don't want you to see us. But this is one time a year that we get the opportunity to shine and show what we're doing, and hopefully get your approval to let us do it again next year. The scope of facilities, this is in anticipation of Black Rock Middle School coming on board. We will have 11 schools. Notably, there'll be 3 middle schools starting up for the next budget year. We have 16 separate buildings, 16 locations, and with the addition of Black Rock, we will cross the 2 million square feet of building space across the district, which makes us a fairly solid, large operation. We also maintain 253 acres. And with the addition of the new school, but not the 1835 site, we will have 30 natural turf playing fields, 2 artificial surface playing fields at our high schools, and with the addition of Black Rock, we will have a 3rd rubber track. All right, help me out here. I thought enter would cycle me forward. Oop, I know what I'm doing here. Okay, I got it.
So you have to be on this to do
Got it.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yep, it's the left button.
We get by with a little help from our friends. Buildings and grounds, this is some of the things that we've done in terms of snow clearing, supportive of operations, adding tents. We have some very talented people, as Jim had shared with us. I like to refer to this as a partial list of the things we do, but in the bottom line is, if it's a building, if it's a ground, if it's anything without wheels and yellow paint on the side of it, that's what operations takes care of. And we've always referred to in the district as operations as the muscle of the body of Lower Merion. So we take care of a lot of things, and there are a lot of things that pop up that you never think would happen, and we just roll with them. Basically, our bottom line is to support educational requirements. We do a lot of things, even when we were out of school for COVID. We still supported the buildings, we supported the infrastructure, and a lot of the things that support remote learning as well. One of the big things we've got coming up is the bottom bullet there. We're going to be a lot of support for the move-in of new facilities. That's going to have a lot of moving parts this summer. And a lot of our focus this year is going to be in the transition, not necessarily some of the other maintenance items. One of our major departments is custodial services. There's a picture of some of our people in action. They are there to support the day-to-day operations, but most importantly, to support the health and safety of all of our buildings. They do such things as listed here. In addition to just normal, what you would see as custodial things, they support keeping our playgrounds safe, keeping our sidewalks open, support a lot of outside groups. We have a tremendous amount of community support that we provide, as well as summer cleaning and minor work order support. Major elements of the maintenance budget. Personnel cost, you can see 14 million and change. That is in anticipation of all positions being filled and the current LMEA contract. Utilities is another major portion, gas, electric, oil, as well as water. These numbers are higher than they were last year, particularly because our natural gas contract expires June 30th, and as you've probably seen in the headlines, the prices are going up. We do have another year with our electric contracts, so the commodity will be stable, but the utilities do provide distribution fees. Those are also going up. The balance of the budget is basically an additional $5.5 million, and that's another group of categories that we'll go through in a later slide. Overtime budget, slight increase simply because we have an additional building to support, but we cover such things as unforeseen events, weather, support of school activities. There's a lot of outside activities we support, but mostly those are reimbursed. Our utility trends continue to be good. Some of this reflects the shutdown during COVID. But I will note that even if a building was only half occupied, we still need to support the comfort and care of it. The way this chart is laid out, if you haven't seen it before, the green is the money and the maroon and the blue is the actual BTUs and kilowatt hours. We do very well in terms of knocking down, a credit to Mr. Schaefer and his team for keeping the energy usage under control. But as you can see, sometimes the green line goes up simply because we can't control what the utilities are charging us for distribution. Although we're very good stewards of the earth in terms of making sure that we're using the BTUs and the kilowatt hours where they need to be and keeping those under control, and we continue to work on that effort. Energy management is a major focus of us. We have actually 5 different energy management systems. Some are HVAC related and 2 of them are related to lighting. We strongly control those, and we are investing upgrades, have upgraded Siemens over the last several years. And this summer, we anticipate that we'll finish up the Siemens upgrade, along with the addition of Black Rock Middle School, transitioning to a new platform called the Seago. The next step after that in coming years will be to upgrade the Andover system, which is becoming very antiquated. We control when we have things turned on, we control when we shut them back down, and we do our best to support operations, but use our energy very wisely. We also do peak load management in the summer, which helps reduce our energy transmission loads from PJM. And lighting is a major factor that we've been working on the last several years, and we'll continue to upgrade things as we can go forward. Maintenance pays off. If you do preventive maintenance, you extend the life of things, you save money on capital, and you make for a more comfortable environment. We do a lot of aspects with pumps and drives, and I know Jim is going to cover the capital going forward. Weatherproofing is a major aspect of what we do going forward. That helps not only in the health and safety of the building, but also in the energy maintenance. And lighting is a huge cost in schools. We manage that the best we can, and we have wonderful plumbers that keep the water flowing and making everything else go where it's supposed to go. This is just an aspect of where we look in terms of the portions of our utility bills. And as you can see, we've got a very solid trend going down. Electricity is where we make our major gains. Water rises and falls. A lot of that has to do with irrigation and what kind of weather that we get to maintain proper, safe fields. But we've chipped away at both natural gas, but the real focus has been in electricity, which is also our biggest utility that we spend on. For the utility budget that we anticipate, 1.1 million for electricity, $500,000 for natural gas. That is a significant increase over prior budgets, simply because our current contract is running out and the commodity is going to be higher priced based on current events. Slight increase with oil, that again, same thing, that's the world environment, and we're trying to maintain our water and sewer costs. I will pause on this slide. This is the budget. This is why we're here. We are looking for $21,987,635 to continue operations and keep the building safe and support education next year. Major portion obviously is salary and personnel. That will probably be covered in a later presentation in more detail. The other aspects are professional services, property services, things we buy. That includes utilities, supplies, and other property aspects. And I will pause for a moment in case anyone has any specific questions.
This includes the new building, or no?
Yes, this is the complete operations budget for the 11 schools and the ancillary buildings. That's why the utility numbers were noted higher than they were in previous years, as well as slight increases in supplies and maintenance. There are some decreases in some of the other specific things. One thing I will note is we will be moving the modulars out of the operation, but the cost to remove them is going to be absorbed by what was the rental cost had we maintained them. So that will be a benefit in a future year, but not this year.
Are there any other questions right now? Okay.
Good morning. Thank you. I was curious about the $300,000 for overtime expenditure. Why wouldn't it be a bit cheaper to hire more staff than?
So a major portion of the $330,000 is snow clearing. So we would not hire people year-round to support snow clearing. We anticipate about 5 storms a year. That's kind of what our number slides into this. So that probably is in the neighborhood of about $150,000. Nearly half of that amount is geared towards anticipated snow clearing. Beyond that, we have buildings that range from over 100 years old to buildings that are going to be brand new. And the 2 types of buildings that need the most maintenance are really old ones and absolutely brand new ones. We do not have a 24-hour maintenance staff. We do have evening people, but for the most part, if we have to bring in someone at night for an emergency, we have to cover that. Additionally, we support athletics in terms of field security. We support buildings for games on the weekends. So there's a lot of aspects that go into that you would not do a full staff. There are times, in fact, this year in particular, I would say that we've used a lot more custodial overtime staff. Part of that, how the sausage was made behind the scenes on that one is we hired this year temporary relief custodians to support the distancing, the spreading out of the cafeterias. That chewed into our substitute team, basically. A lot of the people that were substitutes for us became those TRCs. So we were very short of substitutes, and when we couldn't fill those positions, we basically had to use overtime. So there's a lot of different parts, there is no such thing as a normal year, but I would say in a normal year, it is geared towards snow clearing, support of extracurricular activities, and emergency maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
I thought that really tags off of her question. So is that on slide 16, which is what we're on, is that why it was a little bit over budget because of those extra staff from the 2020 to 2021 budget? So you have your current budget.
Actually,
you're under.
Actually, one of the reasons that that the 2021 budget, the actuals were higher. We did a lot of COVID investments, and it was a conscious action. Bipolar ionization, some of these other things. Some money was reimbursed through FEMA and PEMA. Some of them was replaced through ESSER money. But there was a conscious effort to do additional things, additional projects that put us actually over budget for what was planned. But then again, we didn't really plan for a pandemic as well.
Good morning. So looking at these numbers, it looks like it's just under a 5% increase for next year's budget. And I know we can't really look at 2021 because that's just screwy. But so, and that increase also includes projections for having an 11th school.
Correct.
So I'm curious, so should we expect sort of that next year's budget to be more of the new normal, as opposed to expecting a 5% increase every year?
I always love the budget process because in October of one year is when you project how you're going to end, 21 months into the future. So it's always a guess. I think this will be closer to normal. One aspect that will change, and I don't want to jump too far ahead because we're talking about next year's budget, not 2 years' budget from now. But the removal of the modulars and the lack of having to pay for that will actually put us in a better position from that. Don't know what inflation's going to do. Don't know what LMSB contracts are going to do. So can't speak forward to that. We do our best to work to make the district the best it can be within the budget that Vic gives us, or what he takes away from us, which may happen too. But I think with the additional square footage, that is the main thing that is tied to facilities operations, is because even during COVID, when we had the students in every other day, we still had to provide a comfort level in the building, whether it was 15 kids or 25 kids. So I think this is a conservative budget. I'd always like to have more because I'd always want to do more for the district. But what we get, we do the best we can with that, within that budget.
Thank you.
All right,
I just wanted to make sure everybody understood, when you say that statement, when the school was closed and the majority of students were home, there were some students that were still going to the building. Just to add a little bit more context to that, because I'm not sure if all the parents know that. Because my son was one of the kids that was still going to the building, even though the majority of students were home. Just to clarify it.
Exactly. So previous school year, we were operating about 50% in person, day on, day off. And the numbers varied, and sometimes we shut down buildings. But during that year that's listed up there, we had to operate the buildings fully, even though they were 50% or 60% occupied.
I think one way to look at it is going and remembering that process. It was a phased return. And even at the phase where the teachers were back, and it was teachers only, or even teachers with a limited number of students, the teachers naturally, and also for social distancing purposes, proceeded to spread out across the entire building. So your faculty wasn't all in one place. We didn't want them all in one place. They were spread out across the building, in which case the first, second, and third floors, the lights are on, and the air conditioning is running and things of that nature. So the building, I mean, again, you don't have to utilize as much energy when it's partially occupied, but the fact that it's occupied means you have the lights on and you're maintaining temperature.
All right.
Thank you. So just so I understand, the utilities budget is separate. It's not included in this maintenance budget overview.
No, this is included in these numbers. Utilities are broken up into two different sections. If you go under supplies, that 2.7 million, That will include the electric, the natural gas, and the oil.
Gotcha.
Water is actually under the purchase property service of the 400 series, the 1.9 million.
Okay, so it's inclusive of all the categories that we've seen
Correct.
above.
This is what we are requesting, and once the business office reconciles all the departments, that will be, whatever those final numbers come out to be, will be what the board sees in June to approve for next year.
Okay, so just to clarify, the bulk of the increase for next year is additional staffing to support the 11th school and the increased utility costs?
In a nutshell, yes. I mean, there's some rises and falls in specific budget categories. Operations has a lot more categories than the buildings do. Some are increased, some we're shaving things back. But yeah, the bulk is, there's a good portion that's insurance, there's a good portion that's utilities, but everything else is personnel for the most part.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could, I mean, on the personnel, it reflects additional people and the fact that the LMEA agreement does have increase in rates from year to year. So that's included in the first line, if you will. Looking at our utilities, and again, the water sewer would be on the fourth line, natural gas, electric, fuel oil, heating fuel oil will be on that sixth line, supplies. As we were talking about the kind of the crystal ball of, what the 2023, 24, 25 future budgets, I really think the utilities portion is the area right now where the crystal ball may be the murkiest. Every district, we're part of a consortium consolidation, if you will, in terms of procuring commodity pricing on the utilities, and pretty much every consultant advisor is telling us, don't lock into anything now. This is the worst possible rate, worst possible market, but what will the market look like? Is this the peak? And is this, how much further is it going to come down? I don't think we're going to see the cost per therm or cost per kilowatt we saw 2 years ago. Hopefully we're not paying $4.25 for unleaded at the pump when we all go to the gas station. So right now, that's going to be tough, and that's, I think, where we're going to have to really put a lot of focus, particularly in future budget years, because those costs right now are at the mercy of the market, and the market's not in a good direction cost-wise.
So
Are there any other questions right now?
I do have a question.
Okay.
Is the staff in the operations department, is it unionized?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so just to conclude on this slide, we anticipate that these will be our approximate costs. Some massaging will happen in the next coming months, but we look forward to your support so that we can support the educational programs. I have a few more slides to just talk about some highlights. School security has been a major increase in cost over the last several years. I just want to highlight the last bullet there. The alerters program and equipment have been installed. There's a few functionalities that are still pending, but it is an operational system and was a great improvement over the class system. We do a lot of cost savings and efficiencies. As I said earlier, we do our best to make everything as best as we can within the district, within the budget that we're allowed. You can see some of those processes there, and it's a kudos to the team out here that always focuses on what is the best things we can do within the cost that we can maintain. We share services with Lower Merion Township, have done this for years. It's been a very cooperative process, especially with our grounds staff. We get our rock salt from them. I know other districts have suffered with how they had to procure theirs, but we have a very good partnership. And it goes both ways. We've also supported the township in terms of some of our buses getting stuck on hills, some of our Florida original drivers having little concerns about driving on icy roads. But again, we maintain a very good working relationship with the departments of the township. We support them, and that in turn has related to them supporting us as well. Basically, the goal is to provide the highest quality facilities we can within our budgets, support education and curricular programs. We always focus on preventive maintenance, but we also try to do proactive maintenance. We try to anticipate problems, and we try to go into those things that will save us either money or headaches going down in the future. This will conclude my portion. I'm going to turn over to Mr. Lill to talk about capital. Any questions before I take a seat? Again, thank you very much to the board for the support in the past, and thank you for your anticipated support in the future.
I have one question for you. Can you just go through the cost savings and efficiencies slide one more time? And just because there are new school board members who are going through this budget for the first time, they don't know all the ins and outs of cooperative purchasing and...
Yeah, we do cooperative purchasing with the MCIU. We try to get the best prices. They basically bundle things together with the utilities that allow us to buy the commodity portion of the energy at a lower discounted rate. They kind of bundle and take care of, or can buy blocks or rates that will support us. It does not necessarily help us with the utilities delivery. That's controlled by PJM. And again, kudos to Mr. Schaefer. He and his team always squeeze an extra BTU, an extra kilowatt hour every year, and that's why we had that steady trend down on cost per square foot. Cooperative purchasing, I use bids. We use KPN, CoStars, Sourcewell. Basically, these are programs that are either statewide or national that let us get what we need at competitive prices. Mr. Witt has done a great job of taking the ISSA standards and using the cleaning processes to basically keep buildings at a healthy and maintained level at a effective cost. We use green processes. Mr. Schultz from the grounds department basically has made things wild and kept things under control while still maintaining all of our athletic programs. Municipal, we actually, I don't know, Bob, is it over 100,000 that we've gotten back on the municipal bid?
Over 450 back.
From the beginning.
Today, yeah.
So I think this year we actually have put 100,000 back in by having the garage sale at the St. Justin's Church that we refer to as the annex. So it's this team that basically makes these things happen.
Thank you.
All right, Sheila.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pitts. And just one thing I wanted to add, and I'll keep the slide here just for a moment. That last bullet point where it says property disposal, for the newer board members, every month there's a portion of the board agenda that says surplus property. I mean, this is district property. It does not get released. It stays district property until you, the board, agree with us and we declare that surplus. That's the source of all of these items, furniture, tables, old vehicles, very wide collection of items that are all surplus beyond the useful life for our purposes. We do not have an actual garage sale. The Municibid is actually like an online eBay bidding auction type platform that Mr. Schultz and his staff administer, keep track of the inventories. Pretty good system. And again, generates $100,000 of revenue because of those surplus items, things that no longer are of use to the district. There are other people that have value for it, and we try to get that value brought in as revenue based on bidding it and getting the highest price we can get. So I want to move to the portion of the presentation where we talk about some major replacements. I mean, these are things well above and beyond the work order for a light bulb that's gone out or a piece of HVAC equipment that needs a new motor or things of that nature. When you look at our budget and you see the $21,987,000, those are operating costs, day-to-day maintenance, light bulb that's out, plus your utilities. The 5-year facilities projects, those are larger. Those are hundreds of thousands. Those are potentially millions of dollars. The funding source for that are the capital reserve funds, which Mr. Orlando could speak to from an accounting standpoint far better than I. We take a 5-year projection, outlook, crystal ball, forecast, and the categories of projects that are falling into are life safety, ADA, building code. Certainly, if there's energy conservation and we have a project that creates some payback in terms of reduced utility cost, those are very attractive. Some things that need to be done for program support as program and curriculum evolves. There are aspects of the building infrastructure that need to evolve with it. Equipment or system replacement, everything has a end-of-life date, whether it's a roof, a chiller, every piece of equipment, and even the exterior walls of the buildings themselves need to be properly maintained or replaced at the appropriate time. We also are with the buildings where they are and having 2 high schools that we keep referring to them as new high schools, but Harriton's been in operation since 2009. 20 years ago, lighting controls was a simple on-off toggle switch. You walked in the room, you turned on the lights, you walked out, you turned it off. Now it is all electronic controls with daylight harvesting, daylight sensors, electronic devices that electronics don't last forever. So when you have a quote brand new 10, 12-year-old building, those electronic parts are by no means new and obsolescence is right around the corner. So there's even those types of things that are above and beyond the bricks and sticks in the building envelope. And of course, there's investments made in to support the curriculum and the educational needs. Before I move to the next slide, and we'll get into some dollar amounts and some specific projects. Before I move to the next slide, the one thing I'm going to reinforce and probably do it repetitively, a project that we discuss or a dollar allocation that we discuss here does not mean that it's an approved project, that we're going out and doing it tomorrow, or there is a, etched in stone, it will happen in the summer of 2024, whatever the case may be. As I go through these numbers, there's only about $4 million that are approved etched in stone projects for this summer, which I'll get to in a second. But I always want to remind people, anytime we talk about a project of this size, even if we're just going out to hire the engineers or the architects to do bid documents, that's not a commitment on the board or the district's part that construction project is going to happen. That point of no return, I would call it, is when we bring an actual construction contract to you and say, Jones Construction at $375,492. Once you approve that contract, that's where you're really into a approved point of no return type project. And again, there are 3 I'll identify in a second.
And that usually happens when you do the purchasing reports, right?
Correct. And for these types of projects, typically, these are things that get done primarily during the summer. Now, the summer really only offers about 10 or 11 weeks as you time that you would have the buildings unoccupied. But we usually, to Ms. Robinson's point, you'll start seeing these in January, February. We just did one yet in March. We have 2 in April, and that's about the latest. So that would be that season, if you will, when these projects come to the go, no-go decision. So I will touch base on the projects that we have planned for this summer, which is that bar that I identified as 2022-23 at $4,648,000. I will explain the 23-24, and you can see that there's a larger, higher bar there. And again, we forecast out 5 years, and there are specific projects identified for those last 3 bars. That's just not an allocation. That's just not a placeholder number that we adjust up or down for inflation. There are specific projects behind every single one of those bars, and there's probably 30-something projects in the pipeline somewhere in that batting order of the next 5 years. So again, as I stated, and I'm going to restate, projects that are approved are only the ones that the board has voted and formally approved. So if you look at the green projects, the roof at Welsh Valley, that roof is beyond repair. That's basically every portion of the roof except the recent additions and alterations. That roof is not being replaced. It's still in good shape. It's the remaining A, B, C, D buildings there at Welsh Valley, and there is a substantial amount of that roof that has to be completely replaced. In other words, your roof is basically a membrane, some surface weatherproofing insulation and a metal deck. it has leaked through the insulation. We're basically taking areas down to the metal deck. That's where it starts to get really expensive. There are areas where we can coat things, but once you start getting wet insulation, you're at full failure. Building automation system, BAS, is just a fancy way for us to describe the control systems that are basically the thermostats and controls of our heating, ventilating, and air conditioning equipment. This is a building automation system that, again, Siemens is switching over to new hardware and software. What we have in a couple different locations in the district is now obsolete. This project at Penn Valley will now get the entire district up to the new hardware, up to their new systems. And we had been doing this over the course of the past 2 or 3 years, and this is the final stage. And if I'm not mistaken, Siemens is providing the controls for Black Rock Middle School. So we have several schools on the same system, but not all. We have different manufacturers. Rebuild and reconstruct the 10. Yes.
And the reason that we're doing the building automation systems is because they're no longer supported, right? It's not just because we're trying to upgrade.
Correct. Even if Black Rock wasn't built, we would still need to upgrade these systems because what was in the legacy buildings is now obsolete. It just so happens, and we did plan it this way, we're going to have a new school come online, and it's going to have the same system, same version of everything we have with the 5 or 6 buildings that are on Siemens now. We already have 3 different control systems. We're trying to avoid having a 4th. It's a lot of software, a lot of computer screens. So yes, that's a very, very good point. We'd be doing this at Penn Valley, and we did it at Ballard-Kinwood, and we would have to have done it even if there was no Black Rock. That Siemens system's just no longer serviced, out of date. The obsolescence.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rebuild and reconstruct the tennis courts. The board approved that on Monday night. Thank you. Again, that's another area that it is a complete reconstruction. We're going to basically tear off the synthetic surface, the asphalt below it. It needs it. The next 2 areas, and the reason why we have these is to be determined. These are 2 projects that are on the forecast, but they are not approved projects because we have not brought those bids to you for formal approval. So on April 7th, I believe, we're opening bids for a complete rebuild and a complete reconstruction of Welsh Valley. Ballard-Kinwoods are the greater need of replacement. Welsh Valleys are not far behind, and there's also some issues. Welsh Valleys are not flat. It's just, again, another situation where we were no longer able to do patch repairs. We also have bids out, and I believe we're opening those bids on April 8th to create an asphalt play area behind Penn Wynn, behind the cafetorium. We're estimating that at $200,000. We're estimating the tennis courts at $400,000. Unfortunately, the tennis courts for Ballard-Kinwood, we had estimated those at $300,000, came in at $386,000. Some of that, again, I think is current market issues. I have to be careful here because until we open those bids in Welsh Valley, I don't want to speculate. But it could, again, be the full 400. Hopefully it's not more. We're going to have to come to you with a recommendation that in those 2 projects, it may be one, maybe both, hopefully not neither. But we've already committed and we've already approved $4,047,539, and our allocation was the $4,006,000. So how that lines up is something that will come to you because those 2 projects are not fully approved.
Could you repeat what you just said?
That the 2 projects, the $600,000, $200,000 for Penn Wynn, and the tennis courts for Welsh Valley, those are estimates.
Sorry, just the totals. You said we're approved for what? The 4 million what?
If you take a look at those first 3 lines, that
so you're saying that what's been approved by the board already, the green items are about 4 million?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And we also want to leave a little contingency. So we need to come to you with some recommendations, but until we have those bids, those firm bids, which is ultimately the final arbiter of what the cost of this project is going to be, it's a little speculative. So once we get those hard numbers, that's something we're bringing to you at the April 25th.
This the 4.6 million number, I mean, the slide before this, that 5-year projection, those are projections. Those aren't locked in numbers.
Right.
What was this 4.6 million going into last year? Like this time last year, what was this 4.6 number?
If I remember correctly, it was at like 4.65, 4.66.
So it's roughly in the ballpark, so.
Yeah.
How much flex do we have in that number? Meaning like, let's say both of these projects came in 20% over, like the Ballackinwood Middle School courts. That would, that would put us at, 4.8. At what point would we opt not to do one, or at what point would we opt to shift some money into this year's budget? How does that process work?
Yeah, so what we do is, so we have 3 different areas. We have I'll call it the capital improvement plan, there's a bus replacement plan, there's also an IT infrastructure plan that basically pulls from the funds. We're in the process right now of going through and kind of looking at all those different areas to see exactly what projects definitely going to happen in 22, 23. So that's why I think what Jim says right now, those 2 projects, we need to look at the other areas of it to just confirm like what we have as far as resources go. And as Jim's mentioned, we'll have some contingency there to make sure if there's a change order, so to speak, that we have monies in there. So that's, we're kind of looking through that right now. And then what we do is, as we get further into the spring, we'll start looking at the current year and kind of see like where we think our projected ending of the year and see what those projects would look like for the following year.
Okay, so just to clarify, it is possible that this number could come in at like, I'm just throwing a number out. It could come in at 4.8 when all is said and done.
Correct. So we may have to look at all the projects and see what's priority.
My question's in reference to the tennis courts. How many tennis courts do we have?
Okay, so at Ballackinwood, there are 3. They're getting completely replaced this summer.
When was the last time they were replaced?
1989.
1989. Wow.
Both middle schools we did in 89, 90, so we got them.
I'm sorry, Mr. Schultz, you're going to have to come up and use the microphone because it's being
I'll repeat.
Thank you.
Mr.
He was
Schultz, was that your
projecting. I
first
could
year
hear
at the
him.
district in 89 or was 1989 your first year at the district?
No.
Okay. So Mr. Schultz, who has been here before 1989, has spoken and identified that the courts were installed or rebuilt in 1989.
Rebuilt.
They were completely rebuilt in 1989, 32 years ago. It's also, well, I'll leave that off the record. And obviously we feel we've got our money's worth.
Is that typical? Like you wait until it's just like, okay, you have to do a complete redo, or is there sort of like maintenance annually so that kind of minimizes that? Just out of curiosity.
There is maintenance that's done as needed.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. I got it, Ken. I mean, we have done maintenance over the years, but again, it's the type of thing that from a end of life type situation. I mean, they're out there in the sun. It's the same freestyle. It's almost like it's more than just asphalt. But you picture what happens to an asphalt parking lot over the years, and then that rubberized surface, that synthetic surface, is not going to last forever. We do maintain them, and that'll get you a couple of extra years. And regrettably, we probably should have done these tennis courts maybe a few years ago because they were at the point of no return back. So I think there's times we defer projects. This is one that this is not able to be deferred any further, and we just don't have any more repairs. It's beyond repair.
Okay, so is it 3 total or 4?
Oh, I'm sorry. So you have the tennis courts at Ballackinwood, 3.
Right.
Welsh Valley has 4 tennis courts.
Okay.
Harriton has how many? 6. Harriton has 6. Lower Merion has 5.
Okay.
And the new middle school will have 4. Okay. So it's all of our secondary locations.
So that one obviously will not require any maintenance. So the maintenance or the redo, I'm sorry, is just for the 3 at Balla?
Ballackinwood is confirmed, approved, on the books for this summer.
Okay. And that's what the
Welsh Valley's-
$400,000 is for?
Excuse me?
That's what the $400,000 is for?
No, that was the 387,000 that was approved Monday night.
Okay,
We have a bid for Welsh Valley, which we had estimated at 400,000. We won't know the actual firm price until April 7th. It's currently out to bid.
okay, so basically, it's like $100,000 per tennis court to have them completely redone, so that they look new?
And Welsh Valley is going to be a little different, because Ballackinwood, there was some fencing work that had to be done that's not required at Welsh Valley. So it's not
Okay.
exactly apples to apples, but
Right.
order of magnitude. And again, we just, until we get that firm price, and I think that's why we wanted to bring those two last projects to you together, because when the bids are open, that's the bids. We cannot go back and negotiate it or, try to change scope. It's a low bid, fixed scope.
Right, because there's not a lot of, I'm assuming there's not a lot of companies to do that type of work.
We're getting companies to show up for the pre-bid and show interest, actually getting to submit a bid. We got one bid for
Wow.
Ballackinwood. So we certainly encourage them to submit a bid. We can't force them to.
Okay, thank you.
So, just so that it's clear, the Ballackinwood Middle School tennis courts are in such a state of disrepair that there are cracks through them. There are like fault lines. It's a safety issue as well as just getting them back to being usable. And Welsh Valley is similar, but not quite as bad.
It's not far behind. So yes, I mean, that's where we are with the tennis courts. Harriton, those would have been installed, I want to say around maybe like 2010, thereabouts, Lower Merion's. Actually, Lower Merion's been there for a while. We just redid those maybe 2-3 years ago. We do, in one of these years further out, we do have money allocated that we anticipate resurfacing Harriton's. Again, we have to take into consideration the lifespan and the end of life cycles of all these items: roofs, chillers, boilers. That's the mortality. I mean, there's a certain mortality in all these different systems. So, Mr. Lee, I just wanted to double check, and I'm not going to compare line item by line item, but I went back to the last presentation. This is March of 2021, and the number for 2022-2023 was $4,657,000. So we're right about there. What we have in future years, and again, that was year 2 on last year's chart. Years 3, 4, and 5 were above and around $5 million. And if you look at the years extending out, those are above and around $5 million, except for the one in the middle, or the second one, which I'll describe in a second. So last year, when we did this slide, last year, the grand total was $24,136,000, and this is showing $25,369. Just for comparison's sake, and I appreciate you asking the question. Again, the green projects are the $4,047,000 that we are proceeding but on board approval. We will be back to you in April, and that's the total number that was on that bar chart. So, yes.
Do you want to go first? Okay. It's all right, we were not moving much. Sorry, no worries. Before you went on, I just wanted a couple clarifying questions.
Sure.
First of all, so just to wrap my head around all of this, because it's all new, you have a maintenance budget and you have a capital projects budget. Are there any other budgets that come from your zone of work?
For
clarify.
operations.
Yeah, because when I was looking at this, I was like, wait, is this budget in the previous budget that we were looking at? No, it's not. There's 2 separate budgets.
Correct. So
Go
the
ahead.
2 separate funds, so the initial presentation, which the board votes on, is the general fund, the operating budget. That's the $21+ million figure. And then we have a capital reserve fund, which is a separate fund on our books. That is what Jim is going through, the major projects.
Yep.
We do 3 major components: is our bus replacement, our IT infrastructure, and capital improvement, or withdrawal from that's a separate fund.
Great.
And that's basically funded from surpluses, either expenditures or revenue, or excess revenues from the general fund get transferred into the capital reserve fund. There will be a motion from the board that will approve to say this is the amount of monies, if everything goes okay, and there's a surplus, that you'll vote on to say, this is the amount of money we're going to transfer, and then from that is what projects will come to you for board approval. So the board will approve what monies are going to go into the capital reserve and then what it's actually spent on.
Great. And this is all really helpful, especially if somebody just pops into a committee meeting or a board meeting to kind of get that framing and structure. Second question around that, for your capital projects, there's a contingency, this goes off of Peter's questions from earlier, there's typically a contingency line in there for your capital, because there's always flexibility, you can't guess the exact number. So what is your contingency? Do you have it? I shouldn't assume. And B, what's your percentage?
Jeez, wow.
I didn't think it was that big of a one.
I mean, so I don't know if we put a percentage, I mean, the operations, we kind of look at the projects and we kind of look and see what the project is, and is there potentially that the bid may be a change, I'll call it a change order. So we do leave X hundreds of thousands of dollars left in the project in case, like, for example, the Ballackinwood courts, we had 300,000, we had extra monies in there just in case that it was extra, so now it's taking that. So the only thing comes in, like Jim's mentioning, if some of these projects start going overboard, then it eats away from the contingency. It basically says, okay, well, this project has to be deferred or to a different year. That's basically what happens. So we do have monies in there. We don't run it to the penny, but we have monies in there that basically, if something like this happens, that we can still do the project. But at some point in time, we have to make a decision, and you'll see from over the years, we've moved projects to different years on available funds and also like the condition of it.
So basically you put a buffer but not a contingency percentage.
Correct.
Got it, okay. I think I have one more. Okay, before we go past slide 22, I can't help but ask, what's the big bump in the next one?
It's coming.
Okay, cool.
I'm building the suspense. But if I could, just to close out on that question, I understand. So in terms of the cost, Mr. Pitts presented that $21,987,000. So you think of that of the day-to-day operating, what Mr. Pitts is discussing. Our salaries, our utility costs, toilet paper, paper towels, consumables, things that are day-to-day. That is one fund and set of accounts. This, we're talking about major projects, which, as Mr. Orlando said, is capital reserve. You'll see on our purchasing reports, when we bring you a purchasing report item, it will say operating or cap reserve, primarily, truthfully, for us to keep track of it, so I know it's getting coded correctly. So that's a little bit of a history on where the different funds are. Oh. So how much of a cushion contingency? I typically, let's just say we're doing $5 million of projects. I typically don't want to have us locked into contracts without having about 100 or 150,000 available potentially for change orders. You go after a roof, we do infrared scans, we do all kinds of due diligence, and you really don't know what you're dealing with until you tear it off. There's unforeseen conditions. You go into a tennis court, we're going down, we're going to take it down to the stone, then you find out half the stone washed away, and there's no way of knowing that until you opened everything up. So unforeseen conditions will come into play, and that's why we've been able to leave about maybe 100, 150,000 every summer as a cushion. We don't want to commit all the way to it. Or we have to make sure we have the funds available if we commit to the full, and we do recognize there's going to be something comes up, and a lot of times it's unforeseen, and that's part of the consideration. So I apologize. Did that answer your question? And Ms. Klein, I knew you were next. So, are you sure? Yeah. All right. I didn't want to cut you or deflect anything. Okay. So yes, we have 5 bars. We've discussed this. So $5,850,000. So picture this is summer of 2023, and at the risk of being repetitive, none of these projects are approved. So what we are anticipating is we basically spend approximately $5 million a year. There's years it goes lower, there's years it goes higher. And you have a situation here where the Penn Valley roof, which is an enormous amount of roof because it's a 1-story building sprawled and spread across a pretty substantial footprint, 100-something thousand square feet, all of which is covered with roof. And we have a roof primarily on that building that primarily is I mean, there was an addition done recently. The roof is beyond its life, and we're into tearing it down. We did a recoating. There's a 10-year warranty on the recoating, and that recoating warranty expires this summer. So work we did 10 years ago did have a 10-year warranty, and the 10-year warranty, the clock is now expiring. We are aware of leaks. We are aware of the fact that the insulation is wet, which is the categorical indicator that your roof has failed. And there is a substantial amount of square footage. That is almost a complete replacement of that, almost the entire building. It's a huge cost. And we're hoping roofing costs start to get under control, because those roofing costs were escalating even before the current oil crisis and cost increases that we've seen with the past events of the past few weeks, month. So when you have a roughly $5 million a year system, we knew that there was one year that Penn Valley was going to basically gobble up almost an entire summer. So we have a chiller at Gladwin, which it is reaching the end of life, and I think we have some opportunities there to improve the process system, in addition to things we've done within the piping. And then the third item is the lights in Arnold Field, which again is not, it appearing on this slide does not mean that that's an approved project. This is just how we're putting it into the overall forecast.
I have a question about the roof replacement at Penn Valley. What is the general lifespan of a roof? Like, I know that we, over time, will do all 11 schools, right? So it's on a cycle of sorts. And I guess I'm mostly asking because I'm curious about the addition that was added on, 6-8 years ago? And whether that's part of the roof replacement, whether it ended up being on that same cycle, whether that piece needs or doesn't need to be replaced?
So I'm going to let Mr. Pitts get specific with Penn Valley, because he knows exactly where all the items are. What I will say, and I can this is just me kind of giving some background, different roofing systems have different lifespans. When we built the two high schools, we consciously installed a rubber roof. Let's call it EPDM, ethyl something pi dollar, whatever. It's basically a white rubber roof, EPDM. We would have liked to have gone to a more robust, longer roof, but there was cost constraints. Those types of roofs, my experience, you probably get about 10, maybe 15 years out of them, and maybe you can recoat them and get another 5-10 years out of them. Those are kind of more of the commercial grade, if you will. And we know we have them, and we know why. I've seen roofs that are built up with ballasted and rock and all kinds of other systems that they claim are 30-year roofs. Can't say I've ever seen one of them actually make it, but they certainly make it longer than the EPDMs. So there's an analysis not only of the age of the roof, but what was the initial construction of the roof, because some are going to last longer than others. And then there was also the issue of how well it was maintained, how well additions were or weren't married onto it. And at this point, Mr. Pitts, I'm going to stop because this is your thunder.
So, Roof 101. The biggest cost to a roof replacement, and this is a tear down to the deck and put back on, the number one cost is the ISO board, the insulation board that goes down. And that goes on no matter what the final coating will be. And as Mr. Lill referred to, there's EPDM at the lower range for the final coating, up to what we try to do is a modified TPA roof. So you can have the old industrial roof that you float tar and put stone onto. You can do a rubber overlayment. You can do a modified bituminous asphalt shingle or tile or everything else. Our philosophy has been for the last couple of years that if we're going to do a replacement, we're going to do a hybrid roof. Again, the main cost of the ISO board is the bulk of the material cost. By doing a hybrid roof, you're actually getting two roofs in one, and that roof is going to be a 25-year roof. So we've done that on a portion of Penn Wynn, and we've done that in some tear-off spots at some of the other buildings. When we're doing a restoration or a coating, our current approach is a Puma finish. has a 30-year life. It's a reinforced urethane-based system. And what happens at the end of that 30 years is you redo the top surface and you can get an additional 15 years out. So the new school has an EPDM roof, the lower end, and the two high schools have EPDM roofs. We can recoat those. When we put silicone on top of the roof, which we did philosophically about 10 years ago, it was not necessarily the best product to go with because you can't recoat the silicone roof with anything but more silicone. And it wasn't reinforced at the time. So we've changed our philosophy in the last 5 years, and we are hopefully over the next 4 to 5 years getting to a point where our roofs will be in the 25 to 30 year lifespan before we have to reinvest in that. But that's where we're going now. Does that answer your question, or is there something more specific you'd like me to get into?
I was just curious about the newer part to Penn Valley, like that addition, whether that is also getting a new roof?
So there's 4 classrooms at the top of what I call the U at Penn Valley. That was put in as an EPDM roof. The challenge that we had there, and that is going to be part of anticipated of what the 2023 project would be, because the expansion joint was overlapped and covered with the urethane product. It failed, opened up about a 3-inch gap. Physically, you could look down into the ceiling tiles of that edge, and that basically caused about half of the ISO board above that, the 2 of those classrooms to get wet. Therefore, that has to get pulled off, and really it doesn't make sense to save the last 2 classrooms of EPDM in a overall project sense.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I have a question. Out of curiosity, is there a way to green these roofs? Can we do that?
So the greenest thing to do with a roof is to do a restoration. And that's what we've done at Kinwood, Belmont Hills, a good portion of Penn Wynn. It's mostly what we're doing at Welsh Valley. The reason it's the greenest way to go is because you're not filling landfills with a bunch of tear-offs. If a roof fails completely, that has to go in. Now, if I understand your question right, there are systems called green roofs that actually has a growing media. You can grow plants on top of that. We have looked at those things. The restoration finish Puma is a 30-year finish. That is a good substrate to be able to put a system like that on top of it. When we have looked at it, you get some cooling benefit from having that. You obviously get some environmental benefits from that. The expense is dramatic.
Like what?
Like about a 33% escalator. You're not going to get energy savings enough to do that. It would be more of a social conscious thing to do.
Okay.
If it is something the board wants to look at, Vic will have a heart attack. But probably the best schools to do that on would be when we get to the point of doing restoration projects at the high schools. But again, it is a very socially conscious thing to do. It is not necessarily the best fiscal use of the taxpayer dollar, in Ken Pitz's opinion.
Okay, what about solar panels?
So we had an experimental array at Penn Valley. It basically has failed. It certainly would be an aspect that could be looked at, but that is not geared necessarily towards a roofing project, with the one exception of you only would want to put a solar panel in on a roof that is going to have a 25-year lifespan, because that's basically where your solar panels are. You don't want to pull your solar panels off to fix a roof. So again, at a point where we're going to put for the restoration of the 2 high schools, I would anticipate we would follow the 30-year Puma product. That would be a time to consider that.
Okay, thank you.
And just under this actually envelopes and covers both green roof, in other words, plantings up on the roof, actual live plantings, as well as solar panels, that's additional weight on that roof. And we would have to look at the roof structure, the existing structure of the building, which the building structure might be 90 years old, to see if the structure of the building itself could support that weight. That's definitely a factor. I don't know if that's in the 33% if you went from a Puma to a planted green roof. In terms of solar panels, again, those also add weight. If I recall correctly, I think there were some areas of Harriton and Lower Merion's structure where the engineers put some extra steel, extra reinforcement if solar panels were pursued. But again, we wouldn't be able to just, place them on the roofs without going back first to do a structural analysis to make sure we know it'll support it. And if it doesn't, what would have to be done to reinforce and get that weight capacity. And then we also have to look in terms of the market itself, the payback. I know residential, my father-in-law just put solar panels on the house in Brigantine and he loves it, but then he also didn't pay anything for it, which is loves it even more. But we have to see if there's actual programs in there, and those have been not as spectacular on the commercial institutional side. So there's a lot of factors in there, but that's definitely something as a long term, certainly very, very, very good conversation. Any other questions?
Okay.
All right, we get to the really exciting part. Mr. Vilsons is going to talk about, and can you explain why those buses are not yellow?
Good morning. My name is Uldis Vilcinch, and as Jim said, Ken covered everything but the big yellow object, so I'm the big objects that will cover big yellow object. I thought my time will never come. I don't have a roof. I don't have a roofs or tennis courts in my presentation. Also, I'm losing my voice, so I may sound a little bit like a Dracula, so hopefully it adds a fun to the element to my boring presentation. This photo of the bus was sent to me by Amy Buckman, and it's kind of put in perspective to me. I always have known that Lower Merion is a very historic school district, but I never realized they had buses at that time. And that is 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. It just kind of put in perspective how historic is transportation department. And then fun fact, I started looking in that, and I discovered that company that produced those buses is Autocar, and they actually made them in Ardmore, Pennsylvania, which was also, I wasn't aware of that. So I don't think there are any buses produced in Ardmore right now. I'm gonna highlight scope of transportation department operations. We transport, and this number is changing every day, but when I checked it back in February, it was 8,597 students have seats on the buses. Have seats on the buses. Ridership was split, 7,628 were public students and 969 were non-public students. In our database, we have 8,556 public school students, some of them not on buses because they are walkers, and we have 2,624 non-public students as of February this year. Currently we cover 140 schools. This number also changes daily. This map with the dots is just to kind of give you the idea how far out we may have to go for certain special needs schools, and with a 10-mile radius around the district, that's all non-public schools and specialized schools. There is no 10-mile limit for special needs schools, so we may go even sometimes in New Jersey. The way the 140 schools are split, 42 schools located within Lower Merion School District, and 98 schools are outside of district boundaries. And 11 of them are public schools, 6 elementary, 3 middle schools, that we're talking about the third middle school coming on board next year, 2 high schools, 90 non-public schools, and 39 special needs schools. Again, this is just a lot of information, but basically, in addition to our home-to-school runs, we run a shuttle system for non-public schools. We get 2 students to the shuttle point from all over district, so the one bus then can take them to their non-public school. That is the most effective way to do obviously, we don't have 90 buses to cover each non-public school. We do right-at-school transportation. We provide transportation between public and non-public schools for students, non-public students who receive certain services in public schools. Community-based work programs. We transport students to technical high school program sites. 16 elementary after-school routes we conduct, and we have 18 buses providing 36 late runs for middle school and high school. In addition, we also do community-based instructional trips. I have a 1920 data because last year we didn't have really any community-based instructional trips, but we did have a sports trips, which was 760 buses provided, 662 sports trips. That is also smaller than our normal years. This year's numbers will be more higher for sports trips. Over 6,000 stops we route annually. We operate 300 plus days per year. If the regular school year is 183 days, we transport to non-public schools. Even when the public schools are closed, we have to accommodate their calendars. We also do sports trips on the weekends. The district is required to accommodate non-public schools' calendars and bell times. So it's logistical challenge, and we're dealing with 120 plus different calendars and early dismissals that have to be accommodated for every school. So it's a lot of logistics to make it work. Every non-public school is eligible for same amount early dismissals as we provide the public schools under like services. So we can have a really huge number of early dismissals that we have to accommodate. We also do our own maintenance. Our buses travel 1.5 million annual miles on average. We maintain and repair 178 vehicles, 135 are buses and 43 are district support vehicles for buildings and grounds and other departments in operation. The buses, I'm not going to read every category, but as you can see that we have combination diesel, CNG, compressed natural gas, and gasoline buses. Compressed natural gas buses are half of our fleet. They are very clean. They meet the standards of the set 10 years from now for diesel buses. They are even more clean than propane buses that are lately popular. Here's the budget numbers. The 3 bigger parts of my budget is salary and benefits. Contracted carriers, those are those schools, those dots that are really far out. Usually it's 1 or 2 students, so we contract them out on the smaller vehicles that we don't take our scarce resources of drivers and buses and send them out for a day somewhere. That's the only thing that they could do.
Could you acknowledge Mr. Sandloff?
Yeah, I will. That's why the picture's there. Energy is also a significant part of my budget, and on the bottom corner, John Sandloff, fueling up CNG bus. John been driving for Lower Merion 38 years. Most of the time he has done run 55, so he's now driving grandchildren of the students that he drove 35 years ago. I always joke that he was one of those buses by the earlier slides. He doesn't like that.
Is that why he retired?
Huh? John will be retiring this year, yes. I tried to talk him staying, but. Our overtime budget is estimated at $562,800. Just to kind of anticipate question, why so much overtime? Sports activity trips, everything happens either after school or on the weekends, most of it. So our drivers, then they go in overtime when they conduct sports trips. Same as after schools and programs. When the elementary buses finish around 4:30, then they have to turn around, go to the elementary schools, pick up students from programs. So that makes a longer day and may push drivers' hours. Also, snow removal. We do our own snow removal because we can't really have anybody else do that because we have to move the buses when we do the snow removal. So only person with CDL, commercial driver's license, can do that. So we have to move the buses to clean them. So it's our drivers, the ones that kind of are able to help. They come in and do the snow removal. Early dismissals and 2-hour delays also always contribute to the overtime budget because when there's early dismissal, for example, elementary early dismissal, the drivers have to be here in the midday and then still be then in the afternoon and do their run. Special transportation arrangements for testing. When the high schools, for example, do testing, we may run a morning run and then we may run another run at 10 a.m. And different emergencies, that's more mechanics that have to go out on the weekends when something breaks down or at nights when the sports bus breaks down. These are like Ken said, I'll pause on this. This is a transportation budget. My numbers are pretty much close to what I budgeted last year. We slightly lower on the supplies because I don't plan ordering. Hopefully, I don't have to order as many masks, and we still have some in stock. So if you have any questions about any of these categories, if you want to.
The contracted carrier, who are those people? Is this like a private limousine that picks these children up and takes them? You said it was a small carrier?
It's a small carrier. We use 3 of them. We use Atlas, which is located in Norristown. We use Balgo, which is located in Norristown. Atlas, they are out of Malvern area. They are basically, all they're doing is school transportation. They're not limo companies. They used to be somewhat, but they realized that limo really doesn't work well with the school with the students, because they have to be there for special needs student, and there has to be same driver as much as possible and same bus aid. They also provide bus aids for us too, because many of these students need bus aids. And the third is we started using this year this company called ALC. Same thing, just the sedans and minivans.
Okay, thank you.
So for those 3 companies, they do not operate 72-passenger buses. So they're really geared towards, they're really equipped for an out-of-district placement, a location where only 1 student, maybe 2 students is going, and also a distance. So you'll see these not only in Lower Merion, but out and about. You see an SUV or you see a sedan that has a yellow school student sticker on it. That's part of the contracted services. And for sports trips, is METS and things of that nature in that number? Where do they fall?
Yeah, the sports trips really not in this budget, but so they're not included there, but we use contractors for for sports activities. There's special activity budget for that.
And in those situations where a 72-passenger bus would need to take a team or an activity, multiple students, preferably we would have a Lower Merion driver, Lower Merion vehicle do that. However, if it's the same time that they're on a dismissal route, it's just not practical. We don't have the availability. So there are times we need to supplement for away games, things of that nature.
Are there other questions? Peter, go ahead.
Could you talk about what's driving the increase in salary and personnel costs?
Well, the part of it is, of course, there is a LMEA contract, and contracted rates are going up. There are also some staffing considerations that I believe will be highlighted later in later meetings. That's about staffing, correct, Megan?
So that's an item that will be addressed at April 27th, where there's a staffing meeting. So that will have more to follow.
You mean a meeting about staffing? Right.
Correct, about
The
staffing budget.
the finance meeting regarding staffing.
And I believe that's district-wide,
Yep.
correct? So it'll be every department, and that's where there'll be more detail.
I just wanted to make it clear for the people watching.
Precisely, thank you, thank you.
No more questions. Next slide. This is our capital reserve budget, just like Jim's presentation was about capital reserve. Our buses are purchased from capital reserve budget 2021. We replaced 18 buses. We're not increasing bus numbers currently. We have 135 buses, and we're just replacing them as we go on. This year, 21-22 school board approved the replacement of 8 buses. And next year is, I will ask Vic for 28 buses, and the costs are pretty significant because the bus price is going up very significantly with all the supply chain issues and expenses. But it will be up to Vic how much he really allocates. When he does these things, calculates it out for the district, then we'll see how many buses we can buy.
For the 22, 23, is that because of also the new school?
No,
Or is
it's
that
not.
just?
No, it's not related to new school, but as you can see that usually I try to replace about 16, 18 buses. The approach usually is to replace 10% of the fleet, that over 10 years you rotate a new fleet. It cuts down on your maintenance costs and breakdowns and everything. But this is because there were about 18 to 20 buses that I was planning to replace, and now I kind of put those buses, the 10 buses in that we didn't get this year, 8 or 10 buses.
Thank you.
If I could ask, what age do we usually retire a bus and replace? And again, we're not increasing the number of buses, it's a aging replacement, age out.
Different for types of the buses. The 72 passengers go 9-10 years. You may see bus that is like 2011, but it's might have gone in operation in 2010. So the bus number, we have 9 wheelchair buses that do a lot more miles, and they have lifts on them, so they have to be more reliable. And we have less spare buses for lift buses, so we may replace them at 8 years. Also 30 passenger buses that go out to the non-pubs and everything, or special needs schools, they put a lot more miles, so they may be replaced sooner. But I would say between 8 and 10 years of age.
And if we have a particular bus that's just been a lemon, and if there's $50,000 of powertrain, engine, transmission work, it's probably one that we're going to want to get out of the inventory.
I have a question. Are we moving towards electric?
We following and researching electric.
Okay.
There are some challenges with electric. Electric would require the whole infrastructure to be implemented. The electric bus is around, it was going down, but with all the costs is back up to like $420,000 per electric bus. It can do about 95 miles per charge. So my concern is if we get a snowstorm like we got one day before a few years ago, where our buses were stuck for 4 hours, will the charge last to heating the bus and everything? So the technology is developing. I'm talking to Vic, we're going to the meetings and presentations about, I have seen and driven pretty much every electric bus. They're really cool, but they're very expensive, and infrastructure would even be more expensive.
If I could, just for comparison, you said that electric buses right now have a 95-mile range. What's the range on our CNG with a full tank of natural gas?
120 miles, it's close, but we can't use CNG. That's why CNG buses are not used for sports trips. We can't go farther because we don't know we may not have place to refuel the CNGs where diesel bus can be refueled anywhere, so that's why we have combination of.
So the range per charge is something, we have to deal with sort of with the CNGs because we know we can't take them out on a long route. So that's why we still do have some diesels, even when we were, very heavily investing in CNG, we still had to keep some diesels on the fleet. So there will be that limitation until the technology comes further along, that it can get a full tank of gas, if you will. And then from a charging standpoint, every vehicle that is electric is going to need a charging station, which is going to require a substantial electrical feed and the whole distribution that, right now we currently don't have that infrastructure. I'm sorry, Mr. Lee, you had a question?
Can I follow up on that? Sorry. We're currently paying about $150,000 per bus?
Yeah, 100,
Okay.
a little bit over.
A little bit over.
We add things to it, there are certain features that.
And
yeah.
currently, the electric buses are 450?
420 approximately.
So quite a big difference, right? So.
It's a big difference.
And it also ties in with the earlier conversation about the green roofs, like, there's that tension between wanting to do the environmentally conscious thing and the huge cost difference, right? Like, I did not realize that the electric buses were so much more expensive. That's really interesting. Thank you.
And there will be time when things swing, because I don't believe manufacturers invest in diesel engines anymore. The research is more concentrated on alternative fuels and electric vehicles. So at some point, things will change, but right now it's kind of it has gotten far along, but I don't think we're completely ready for that.
Thanks. I have two questions. One is, when we replace buses, the buses that we're sunsetting, we sell those back to the manufacturer, right?
We usually sell it back to manufacturer, yeah.
Okay. These costs here, is that the purchase price or is that the net price after we?
That's a net price after the trade-ins.
Great. Thanks.
One of the limitations on trade-ins, I think we did put a bus on municipal bid once, which was not, I think we found out there's more efficient ways to do it. When we trade in a CNG bus, nobody wants them. They can't support that engine, they can't support that, it's basically scrap metal. So trading it at 72-passenger diesel, that's a pretty good vehicle if somebody wants to buy it on the open market, but if we're trading in a CNG, it's a unicorn. There's nobody that can take it on and fuel it and operate it, so.
And the CNGs are more expensive as well, right?
That is correct.
Yeah,
CNGs
upfront.
are more expensive.
Okay. Second question, how long, is there a durability difference? Like how long do we anticipate CNG lasting versus diesel? Are they both the same 10 years or do diesels last longer?
We do usually anticipate about 10 years on both. It's not a CNG or diesel specific, it's a rust that does the damage and just a wear and tear on the buses. I mean, the mileage may not be huge on a bus, but you look at the hours on a bus because it stops and goes and it's idles 3 minutes there, 3 minutes there. So it's a heavy load on the buses. So it's not CNG or diesel rated. There used to be that CNG tanks were like 5-year rated or 6-year rated. Now they're rated for, I think, 20 years. So they can both be used for 10 years.
Thank you.
72 passenger CNG buses, we've gotten a really good track record, very good reliability. I mean, it's almost like, the key part of our fleet. We've branched out into like 30 passenger on their small vehicles, and it's been a disaster because there's just aren't manufacturers doing those and the support's not there. But we do have a really good system right now with the CNGs, and we also have the infrastructure with 2 fueling stations. So it definitely has a very important part of our fleet.
I'll proceed then. We do try, talking about prices of CNG and diesel buses, we work with one of our grant writers that is specifically specializes in alternative fuels. And we have been able to get over years many grants. These grants cover cost difference between diesel bus and CNG bus. Cost difference used to be around $30,000 when I started. I expect next year to be $55,000 because just the prices of buses are going up. I also believe that they will go down a little bit because this is a kind of unusual circumstances. They will go down when the supply chain issues get resolved. We have since 2011, we have gotten $1.3 million in grants to cover the difference per cost. We also get a rebate, IRS, what they call excise tax rebate, that is 50 cents per gallon equivalent of diesel. That usually, 2020 number is low because that was that year that was, we didn't do that much transportation. Usually we get around $100,000 back on CNG. Unfortunately, Congress hasn't approved the next year, but we hope, usually they talk and finally approve it, so hopefully it gets approved for next year. And another revenue is the annual state subsidy, which is based on the mileage, the number of students we have on buses and everything. There is a very complex state report that we submit to state, and we can expect about 1.8 million, I'm estimating, back.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? That was very informative. Thanks, Aldis.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your support of Transportation Department. It's truly appreciated. Thank you.
Can I just add in thank you for all those days that you had to actually drive a bus? We appreciate when you go and drive the bus and leave your office so that our kids can get to school.
On those days, I'd rather be in a bus than answering phones, so it's fine.
And don't tell Aldis, some of the office staff has enjoyed him being on a bus and given him a couple assignments here and there for some separation.
So our next meeting is April 20th.
April 20th, Student Services.
Okay, great.
And then April 27th is Staff and Information Systems, and then May 11th is Curriculum and Instruction.
Perfect. Thanks, Vic. So we will record those meetings as well. And for those watching, thank you and goodbye.